Cindy Wormington, so.
I had nothing to do with the Cindy Warmington sign. They just appeared along with the dead porcupines.
Yeah. Well, she was in town last weekend, that's probably.
Was Cindy in?
Yeah, there's a couple guys, I was trying to lowball me, and I'm not trying to lowball.
That's good.
We got, Ford, asking,
Vote
You
for
know.
the best candidate. Absolutely, I'm an independent.
it'll go.
too, yeah.
I was.
Instead of
And I
advertising.
will be again.
Yeah.
I don't advertise on Craigslist.
Voting for yourself, huh?
I probably will.
Sure, why not?
I'm just getting
We're old.
frustrated.
By them is
by the establishment.
Oh, I bet you it's brutal. Yeah.
Hey, Ron.
They think they know what they're doing and they think they know the best way to reach Enfield.
Yeah.
And clearly they are misinformed or haven't done their research.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, people. It is 6:31. This is the Enfield Planning Board. It is August 28th, 2024. And we are at the DPW conference room on Lock Haven Road. And we are on the Microsoft Teams video platform. Calling the meeting to order, members from my left, starting with Linda.
Linda Jones,
Eric Russell. Dan Kiley.
I'm David Frack,
I'm Phil Vermeer. Brad Rich. Tim Jennings.
Bill Griffin, staff.
Whitney Banker,
Rob Taylor.
Okay. It looks like we have a full complement of board members tonight, so
Yeah.
we are not going to have any alternates elevated. Members of the audience, if you have all signed in, that would be appreciated, okay? And we will take comments from the audience, after we conduct our business. Changed it up a little bit. So, there are no hearings, conceptuals. First, we have Steve Kovac, Lock Haven Road. Come on back up, Steve.
Okay.
Take the hot seat. And tell us a little bit about what you want to do. This is a conceptual, which means that nothing that you say, nothing that we say is binding. We're just here to listen to your idea and make some general comments on it. When
Thank
you
you.
come in with a formal application, at that point, we can act on it. But, you know, at this juncture, if you propose something that just totally is not gonna fly, I think we can tell you so that you can modify your plans.
Yeah. And just for your reference, I have pulled up.
I have, some, I got 4 or 5 of these. Get started with.
There's the end of.
Thank you, Steve. And we can share that.
Yeah.
There's, well, I should have offered to share with, yeah, are those all the same?
Here's another one.
Here to be. Oh. There we go.
My land surveyor, I've had him on a retainer for the last year and a half. And, no progress because he's so busy. Everybody knows who he is. Anyway, he promised that he'd get to me in September. What's that? Couple more days, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. You want a little land history or should we cut right to it?
Let's give us some history. We have a
Alrighty.
new member since you were here
Oh, okay.
last.
All right.
Tim Jennings is a new member, as is Brad Rich.
And Bill.
And Bill is, but he's an alternate tonight.
Yeah,
Everybody else, I think you know.
yeah. Well, we're talking about a piece of land that's quite historical on Lock Haven Road by the dam. Used to be an old fishing lodge. This will be my second application for a minor subdivision. The first one was 12 acres cut out of the supposedly 220 house, barn, garage with 12 acres went to the Reagan family.
Mhm.
And that was, in 11/01,
That was this.
2022.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's the remaining land up here.
that was 11/01/22.
Yeah.
That minor subdivision was approved by planning board 09/24/2021. That 220 acres supposedly, after we did get some surveying done, turned out to be about 175. You get around Mud Pond, about 50 acres down there.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna go near it. It was locked out 02/2012. Some time ago.
Mhm.
So now I'm planning another minor subdivision. Approximately 12 acres. Consisting of 3 lots. She's zoned R3. Like I said before, I have the land surveyor on retainer. And this is what I sent him, the land surveyor, so give him an idea what I'd like to have him do.
Yeah.
I had some in progress already. The driveway at Lock Haven Road was completed with a driveway permit. I'm not saying it was town approved, but it was just a permit you apply for when you're gonna tie into Lock Haven Road. That was done in 07/11/2022. I had to cross a seasonal stream. I got permitted for that. Dated 7/27/23. Work in progress. I'm cutting in there with service roads. I have my own bulldozer. So I'm cutting in the first half at 163 acres. Originally, it was 174. Subdivided 12 to the Reagan family, so that puts it now down to 163 acres. That's what I'm paying taxes on. And all the service roads I'm cutting in on the first half of the 163 acres, which takes me up to the top of the hill. I'm following all the logging roads when it was logged out. So that's it. Just seeking
Yeah.
minor subdivision. That's on map 16,
Yep.
lot 12.
Okay,
It's probably the roads that I'm concerned about,
that's,
because someday I'd love to have them taken over by the town.
Yeah.
I had 3 lots already.
Right.
People requesting. My neighbor here, Tom Merle, his one lot I have would be adjacent to his property. So he's he's interested in that.
yeah, we, we appreciate that you'd like to have the town take over the road. Planning board actually has nothing to do with that. The select board would make that kind of decision. But what the planning board does say, which is what our regulations say, is that if a driveway or roadway is going to service 3 lots, it has to be built to town specifications. So that needs to be part of your plan and part of your financial thinking as you put this project together. That's about the only comment that I have.
Is there a difference when it goes to 4 lots? Because this should be accessing 4 lots.
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
It's 3 or
Eventually.
more.
It's 3 or more.
Right, I just,
That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
yes.
Either way, it's gonna be expensive.
Yeah, either way, he's gonna have to
If
do
I
it.
go too many lots, then it becomes a major subdivision,
Well, yeah, but
and I can't afford that.
no, but the other side of that is you also can't come back within the next 5 years and do another subdivision, because then even if you subdivide to one more lot, it becomes a major subdivision.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you can't just keep taking pieces off 6
Well,
months
see,
at a
that-
time
Now I'm getting, now I'm
and saying, I'm getting around, that's a way to get around the major subdivision. You can't just keep subdividing.
All
We're
right,
okay with the second one, but it's gonna be the third one that becomes the issue within a 5-year period.
uh-huh,
Because then all of a sudden, you're actually doing a cluster development in a major subdivision. So you really, that's where that kicks in.
Yeah.
The major subdivision will kick in.
So a road built to town standard requires an engineered plan.
Right.
So civil engineer would have to design the road. It would have to be inspected by the town as it's being built. That's if you wanted to make it attractive to the town to even consider taking it over. Is that correct?
That's just.
as I said,
That's
we don't
just
get
to
into-
access the lots.
Right.
More than.
Yeah.
yeah, we don't
That's
get
regardless,
into,
we really have this discussion.
whether it's gonna be taken over by the town or not. All we have to deal with is what the regs say, which is 3 lots, you're into a town spec.
Yeah, that's,
how many lots can I go right now, at this point? Still keep it a minor subdivision? 3 is it?
No, the minor subdivision is not the issue here. It's the access to the lots that you're creating. So if you are gonna do access to 3 lots, then the road has to be at town specs. If you wanna do 4 lots, same thing. You wanna do 5 lots, same thing, but at some point, it becomes a major subdivision. Or you have to wait 5 years. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm 86, so I think 5 years down the road, that's gonna be somebody else's problem. Probably my son's, because.
I hope you're around for it.
Because even if you did 5 lots on this, it becomes a major subdivision.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's it would be, if you said, I want to put in 5 lots today, then it's subdivision, it's a major.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
That was the question.
All
That was
right.
the real question.
Now, that's
It's a
what it's
major.
at.
That's-
I think, I mean, I will just say that, I mean, the difference in price for us from the application is not
No.
significant.
No.
It's $250 for minor and $500 for major,
Right,
plus $100 per lot created
right.
on the major. So, I mean, it's not a huge amount of money on the minor versus major difference.
Okay.
Right.
But like these guys are saying, what is the big difference is the road.
The road.
To be able to get the frontage that you need for this subdivision, you're gonna have to build a road to town spec.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we can show you that, we've got it
Okay.
in this reg, and
Yeah.
Yep.
you can work with Public Works to see what. And that's also determined by the amount of traffic that you're anticipating. There's a certain threshold, I think it's 50 cars and less. There's this road design, 50 to 100 is this design, and you start going up as the traffic increases. You know, the road width will get wider and the depth of base gravel and those kind of things will change. But, I mean, you got your own dozer, that you puts you way ahead of most people building a private road. I mean, that's a huge thing. And, being able to put in, gravel and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, but what I was just cautioning or suggesting, not that we can require anything, is that if an individual wanted the town to consider taking over a road, then it's going to be a much easier question than selecting. If that road initially had a fully designed, engineered plan by civil and stamped drawings, and it was built to those specs and inspected by a third party for the town. At that point, then you've got a road that maybe the town would consider taking over. If you don't do any of that, then it puts the town in a position where they probably wouldn't even consider it.
correct, if it's not built well. I mean, we do have a lot of private roads in town that were built before we had zoning and subdivision regs that are not up to snuff, but
But
because
there's
we do have those regs, yeah, we do have regs now that are, we're not taking a road unless it's built right, I mean, we did one in Plainfield that we took. It's called Baines Road, and that was built right to the town specifications,
Yeah.
complete with, underground utilities and,
Ooh, wow.
but that was in where there was sewer and water service, and you don't have to worry about that here, so that gives you a little bit of a leg up on other possible road design. But, I mean, you may wanna put utilities underground, I don't know,
Well, I think we should go underground anyway these days.
Yeah.
Like they
Much
do
more
down
resilient.
south now.
Yeah, they've figured out how to avoid frost heaves from destroying the underground utilities, or at least minimize that now, so that would certainly be a preferable way of doing it, but again, it's considerably more expensive than running overhead lines.
Yeah.
But again, that's a decision for you and your engineer, to talk about. When you come to us with a plan, we can certainly, look at it and approve or disapprove or suggest modifications. It's,
So just to throw this out there for discussion, if one wanted to consider a cluster development, then you take the 164 acres that remains, 50% of how do you calculate,
Open space.
well, how do you calculate the
I
number
think
of
it's-
housing units?
I think it's buildable land, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's buildable land, which means the land on Mud Pond is not buildable, obviously. If there's any real steep slope, it's not buildable.
Yeah, well, the point is that you could get more houses on smaller parcels.
Yeah.
You'd probably have to have a community septic system, perhaps even a community well with a shorter road. I mean, that balance,
Right.
One would have to.
yeah,
Yeah, in the R3, I'm gonna say probably not a community septic system, I mean, because you're looking at a 50% bonus on the lot size, so you're still an acre and a half
Right.
of land, I mean,
You may be fine.
maybe fine, unless the soil is
As
terrible.
long as it's permeable, yeah.
Right,
Right.
right. But I mean, right now, he's not proposing cluster,
no,
but it's an option for you.
it's
If you
it's
wanted to-
something that you could talk.
I thought about it. I
Yeah.
mean, that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we were here then
when you,
too.
oh yeah, when you last did here, you were
Yeah.
talking and clustered it up.
We did, yeah.
But I would encourage you, I mean, if you're gonna do subdivision with the land out closest to Lock Haven, to plan that someday in the future, somebody might wanna expand it up in there and create more lots.
Yeah.
I mean, housing is in demand, as you know, incredibly in this area. So I would think that somebody would someday might wanna extend your road. Now, I know there's a limitation on how long a dead end road can be. I think it's 2,500 feet.
That's correct.
Now, you could do a road that goes up and comes back around to
Cul-de-sac.
itself.
Or you can do a loop.
A loop would probably eliminate the dead end
Right.
requirement. So those are some options as well, but, And the moral of the story is the land would be high demand. People need building lots around here. It's something that we're working on as a group here, these guys. Housing. It's really a sort of top of mind thing for everybody in the planning world in New Hampshire and Vermont and New England, America.
Yeah,
So,
that's off this conception at this point.
yep.
Did you have any other questions for us?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much for coming
Thanks a
in.
lot.
I understand where I'm at.
Okay,
And feel free to come talk to me anytime. We'll continue.
I will, yeah.
And bring in Scott. I mean, we like working with him.
Yeah.
I told you, like, this is the one that you hand wrote everything on. So,
next,
Want this back?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
When I get Scott Sanborn, get this official one, we'll be back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
all right, next we have a conceptual from Mr. Jeff Goodrich,
Does not appear to be here.
who does not appear to be here.
So it's
And in that case, we do not have a
We do not have
conceptual.
conceptual.
If he comes in later, we'll take him at the end of the meeting.
Check.
Eric, select board report.
Yes, let's see. Had a good meeting last time, building projects are moving along quickly. Whitney Hall, they should be putting up, well, they were gonna have their in-wall inspection last week and should be putting up drywall, since that went well. So they're still talking about finishing by the end of the calendar year, which would be pretty amazing if they do that.
Everybody like
And then people who've driven Route 4 have seen their pouring foundations and concrete and stuff. Public safety building, and that's a panelized construction, so once that's all done, there'll be a fast wall and roof structure. They're hoping to have that closed in time so they can work into do the interior work over the winter, which would be really good. Let's see. Had a little discussion around alternatives for the Shaker Byways grant. There was a requirement for the grant to have a discussion of alternatives, so we did, but in the end, everyone agreed that the plan they've already had is sort of the obvious good plan to move forward with.
Eric?
Yeah.
Related to that, is that sidewalk or walkway going in on Route 4A?
No,
It's not going.
So, yeah, so where that is, so that they got the grant, which was theoretically to go all the way through construction of that walkway. However, they didn't get the contract signed, this was on the federal government side, until January sometime. And they have a hard deadline, all work must be completed by the end of this fiscal year, so September. So there was never going, so by the time they signed the contract, there was not gonna be time to complete it. However, we are gonna be able to get through all of the engineering and have a shovel-ready project for the next grant application. So that's sort of where that stands. Then we had a discussion of budget priorities and some ARPA funding that we have to allocate because DPW wrote a grant, so freed up some of those ARPA funds again. And there'll be more, there'll be a hearing on that. Our next meeting, I think it is. So.
Yeah, first one in September.
Yeah, so that stuff will keep going forward. That was our meeting.
Okay. Rob. What have you done?
So, let's say,
What's going on?
I'm just back from 2 days off this week. I went Monday or Sunday down the Connecticut River, just FYI. Yesterday I did another day off. I went up to Cole Pond and George Pond. Got some cool Enfield exploration done. And that was awesome. If anybody here hasn't done those, yeah, put them on your list there. Two absolute treasures in Enfield. Last week, Bill and I represented Enfield on a perambulation. Those of you who don't know, that's a English word for walking the boundaries of the town. It's required by state law that this happen every 7 years with all surrounding towns. Supposed to get together. I did it when I was selectman in Plainfield. It's super fun. We had an excellent time last week. We met with 2 Conservation Commission members from Grantham. We were appointed by the select board to be their perambulators for Enfield. And we did 5 monuments on the Grantham Enfield line. If you look behind David, we started, the first one was that lower southeastern corner down here. That was in Eastman, very close to what they call a frog pond, which is to your right, David, in the corner over there. Yep, that one. So that's right near Conkey's pit.
Yeah.
You guys remember from the discussions we had with Conkey? They call it the frog pond in Eastman. You can access it from within Eastman. We went out a little hiking path. It's very pretty out there. But you're also up above both of the old gravel pits in Enfield. So you can see all the logging that was done in both of those old gravel pits. That one was really easy. So was the other one on the other side of the boot heel. That one was nope, down. That's that one right there.
Okay.
That one was super easy to find. That one was right off the side of an Eastman road. I think it's called the Shore Road, which goes around the other side of the lake. Then we went up to that upper one right there. That one is easily accessed from the Coal Pond Trail. About halfway up that Coal Pond Trail, we found the monuments. The guys from Grantham were very well organized. There was a gentleman who's an engineer for Creary. He's done it now. This is his second go around. He's done all the Grantham lines and all the points. So he's very familiar with all of them. And so he had GPS and navigation down so we could find them. And
How
he brought-
large is each monument?
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I think Kurt has actually been involved that were 4x4 posts
Oh, really?
that may be 6, 8 feet tall. And somebody's taken a router and actually routed Enfield on this side and Grantham on this side and Springfield on this side. It's really cool because several of those points are actually multiple boundary points. Like that one is Springfield, Grantham, Enfield. So we went to that one and then we went out onto old Route 10 in the vicinity of exit 14. We found a pin that sort of marks that straight line going across. So all of those were fairly easy, although that one that I'm talking about now was a little harder to find because it was right off old Route 10 in the vicinity where somebody had dumped a whole bunch of rock and debris and kind of had to bushwhack around to try to find it. But we did find that one. And then the last one, probably the most exciting one we found was up on Snow Mountain. And that one is actually a pin that marks the boundary of Plainfield, Grantham, and Enfield. Those of you that know, 1853, the old marker for all 3 towns was that corner over there. But Grantham actually petitioned the legislature to basically get rid of about 1/3 of their town and give it to Plainfield. And the reason for that is geography. The top of Grantham Mountain is very high, and they literally ran the line right down the top of that ridge, such that the land on the western side of Grantham Mountain is Plainfield, and on the eastern is Grantham. So the pin for that is about right in the middle of that long straight line on the southern edge of Enfield. So we had to go up. It's really pretty up in there. We went up there's an access road that I would describe as Ruger Gate. Mr. Ruger used to own a ton of land up there in East Plainfield and Grantham. And they had done a lot of improvements in that general vicinity, so there's some really beautiful roads. They close gates in the summer, so you can't drive up there. In the wintertime, they open all those gates for snowmobiles, and the snowmobiling is the best in the Upper Valley. Because it's at elevation, so they get way more snow than we do in any other place around here. And so that area of Enfield, Grantham, Plainfield is really spectacular. There's a lot of old ponds up there, and like I said, these woods roads are very high improvement. You could drive, any car up and down. So for that one, we sort of had to go up that road and then kind of cut off and start heading up to the pucker brush. And it was a pretty steep elevation that we got up to, and we found that last marker. I do have a little bit put in the newsletter for general publics. We took some pictures, and there's a really neat photo that I took of the monument in that corner. is very old. It goes back to the 1853 annexation. And the old timers, when they went to it, they brought a chisel and a hammer, and they would actually chisel the date and some initials.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of cool because there's tons of chiseling from every 7 years all the way around. It's become a little less of a priority now because we've got GPS and we can find those markers without any trouble. And, you know, the guy that we were with, he sets his little receiver on there and he's, yep, still where I originally thought it was. You know, it's like, it hasn't moved. So he did bring a can of spray paint and we painted things orange to brighten them up again. And he used some flagging. And then from there, after we found that last of the 5 monuments, we actually continued up to, there's a cell tower up there on Snow Mountain that is actually owned by, the land is owned by the Upper Valley Land Trust. And they rent it, and there's a really nice road that gets up there till we were able to come down that road. And it comes down right near the Humane Society on Old Route 10. And then we walk down there, there's like a bike lane that gets us back to Grantham, exit 14. So that was a kind of a neat project. I would imagine there may be a call coming in someday that Lebanon will want to do the same thing, although you can see that's a pretty easy line as well. We know where that corner is. That's right off of Methodist Hill on the southern end. I'm sure we'll have to do those. We'll have to do Canaan perambulation at some point, and then Springfield and Grafton. So we've got significant work ahead at some point. I don't know how organized those other towns are, but Grantham was right on top of it. They take it very seriously, and some of their perambulation, as well as Plainfield, is very remote, very inaccessible. He told stories about going up in the forest, the Blue Mountain Forest, Corbin's Park. You have to get permission from them, and you have to go up in there with an escort, and you have to watch out for wild critters that are stalking, including wild boar. So that was really neat. Let's see, newsletter submission. I know that you guys are working on a press release. If we want to get that in the newsletter, we should have that in the can by tomorrow if we can. I saw a draft. So we'll get that over to Alista with any revisions that you've got.
When did you send that, Tim?
Just today, I forgot about the newsletter. Actually,
Okay,
If we can, it would be great to get in there.
sure.
If we can't, we can put it in next month's.
I'll take a look.
Take a look at it. And just don't come back with me, just make changes.
Okay, I haven't looked at, I usually read my planning board account in the morning and,
Yeah,
That was this afternoon.
I'm sure we can get it turned around. If you look at it and
I'll look at it
zap it
tomorrow
off to
morning.
me, or at least we can get it in.
Yeah.
Budget season is arrived, as Eric had indicated. I know that they had a budget meeting last night. All of the department heads, including myself, have submitted our budgets to town manager. Town manager will work his magic, and he'll have a version of our budgets that goes to the budget committee, and then obviously it gets hashed out over the next 4 or 5 months for preparation of the town report and publishing in the town warrant.
If I may.
Yeah.
Perhaps just as a new business item, but we could talk about whether or not we want to request any, consultant funds
Yeah.
later in the meeting.
My general sense from what I'm hearing on the street is that the motivation for our budget makers is gonna be try to hold it tight this year, because we had obviously a really big increase last year. And obviously there were some expenses that didn't get included accidentally from last year, so
3 years in a row. It's been
we're gonna be trying to find, and we're in that mode right now, because town manager has instructed department heads not to spend anything that we don't absolutely have to, and so things that are sort of optional for us are right now option no. So we're in a sort of conserving mode, which is good. We can do that and hopefully accommodate. And obviously my department is much smaller than Public Works, but we all can play our part. So Vinny, our new town building inspector, seems to be settling in nicely. He's doing a lot of inspections, fairly busy on the building side. I will, again, next month, at the next meeting, have a report for you from him with the recommendations that Tim, I think, had come forward with, classification and so forth. Still fairly busy at the land use office with considerations of all kinds of different things. We're still working on finalizing some design stuff for Shed Street for the selectmen to consider. We have a single respondent to that RFP that is still working on some architectural design stuff to show the select board and see if they're interested in moving forward with that, possible development.
Has that land been purchased or is there an option at this point?
Yeah, that's the proposal. We actually have a proposal from a potential buyer for
But
that.
the answer is no, there's no
Yeah, No
agreement,
transaction.
Okay,
there's no agreement, there's no deal, it's purely a proposal.
okay.
Would that come to us as a conceptual?
More likely that it comes to us as an application. But it could, absolutely, it's an option of a developer to come to us as a conceptual.
I guess my question would be, would the select board find any benefit to having the developers see us for a conceptual and get some comments and?
The approach that we've taken so far is that they have to follow the zoning. If they want exceptions, they have to go through the process to get the exceptions. Like the select board can't grant exceptions. We can't say, hey, we like that and go do it. So if they have to go to the ZBA, if they have to come here, they will have to do those processes.
But wait, there is new legislation that the governor has signed, which will allow the select board to pass zoning revisions, ordinances, after a public hearing.
Okay. That's certainly not been our approach so far. I don't think that's necessarily an approach that we want to take.
I don't think it's a good approach, but.
So at this point, what I would say is it would really be up to the developer. We're not going to make them go through anything they don't want to, but they will have to go through all of our all of our regulations and processes.
You got an interesting decision to make. Because you're partially basing your decision to sell that on what he intends to build.
Yes, my guess is if they want to violate, get some exceptions, if they want a height exception, if they want a density exception, if they want something, they'll probably, from their end, they would probably request that they have time to get those exceptions before the transaction happens.
A conditional offer or something.
Right, and from our end, we would probably want that to be the case, to know that what they were proposing could be built.
But if they came here for a conceptual, before they purchased, we provided them some feedback that might be useful.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I'm.
that's good. It's a very good comment. And the next time we meet with them, we can certainly have that conversation. But at this point, it's still very much conceptual. It's not, they're nowhere ready to do a conceptual discussion with this from what I've seen. But they're getting close. And we're not at a decision-making point either, because they're not at that point.
Jim Kelleher was in this evening today. He's proceeding with the plan to convert Copeland Block to housing, at least a portion of it. The restaurant would stay, but he's the second and third floors. I think he's hoping to do a conversion. I think he came and talked to you guys at some point. Didn't he? He came in for conceptual? No?
Not yet. He would need to come for a minor site plan, I believe.
Yeah, I've talked to him. So he's actually hiring a firm to help him with that,
What is it now? What is the second and third floor now?
It's a professional space, office. Yep. But his problem has been that that's not a hot commodity here in Enfield, for sure. And I don't think it is anywhere in the Upper Valley, really. I think he's got maybe 10 suites and 8 or 9 of them are vacant, so he's got 2 or 3 tenants in there that he'll accommodate as long as they want to stay in there. But I think it's probably a wise choice on his part to convert. I mean, it's a beautiful building. I don't know if you guys know the history there. It was completely refurbed in about 2004. 2000, I think, maybe started, and obviously the restaurant went in about 04. And so it's like a deep retro, they went in and put sprinklers in and all new wiring. And so it's a modern building, actually fairly decent shape. He did talk to me today that he's considering a elevator exterior to be able to get up and down the stairs, and
Yeah.
Those are steep stairs.
they are steep stairs, like a fire escape.
Killer.
Yeah. And then he's also, very close to being ready on the apartments across the street on Main Street. I actually got to go on a tour, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He has all the kitchen cabinets in, all the appliances. He's working in the sort of common area, like the entryways. He's got to put some flooring down. The heat pumps are all in, and they're really nice. They're small, very small apartments. But they're gonna be very nice, in terms of the fit and finish inside. I think he thought maybe within a month, he's already got people asking to rent from him, so I think he's in good shape there. What else I can give you for updates? Any questions for me?
The brewery's still moving forward?
Oh, yeah, so I did have a nice meeting today with Brian Degnan. He is coming to go apply for zoning, a couple of zoning approvals.
One for the sign.
One for the sign. He wants a special exception to be able to do this wholesaling business, as well as we talked about at the last meeting. He's working on that. The conceptual that we were gonna talk about today, but they didn't show, is the Bog Road gravel pit, formerly owned by the Crates, now owned by Nicole Site, that we actually had talked about, I think, a few times. She's now moved out of town, but she's contemplating a cluster development there. It's about 100 acres, so it might actually be a great spot for some cluster, particularly because there's a brook that goes through that sort of segregates or cuts off the backland. There's a lot of backland that was heavily wooded. They did do a big timber harvest up there, but in a couple of years, that'll be wildlife heaven up there as it sort of regenerates. And so they're talking about using what was the gravel pit in the front. Fairly well drained, so septic systems, I think, would go in there. It's, it's a sand and gravel pit, so that's what's the bottom of that land. And Jeff Goodrich from Pathways, we had a meeting last week with Nicole, and they're working on it, so it's professional engineering to look at that. CBA, the appeal is in the Hillsborough Court. We've got a scheduled date of the 13th of November, which is a Wednesday at 10 a.m. Lawyers are now working on motions and back and forth. I did submit the certified record early last week. Our attorney called me up, said, that's the best certified record I've ever seen. So he was super excited about it. Just very thorough. I made a table of contents and filed everything so that they can find everything they need. Obviously, that goes to our attorney. They make copies, and then it goes to the appellant's attorney, as well as the developer's attorney has filed as what they call an intervener. So there's basically 3 attorneys that'll be working on this case back and forth at the Hillsborough Court, which is actually in Manchester on Chestnut Street. So that actually works to our favor because our attorneys and the developer's attorneys are right there in Manchester. So they won't have to drive all the way up to Haverhill, where they would be if it was Grafton County. So we'll save some money on travel and time for that. It's much more convenient for those attorneys. Let's see. That's about it. I guess I'll shut up and let you guys continue on your work.
Next minutes from August 14th.
Does anybody need a copy?
Possible change on line 104. Actually, Whitney, you put flat lots in quotes. I'm not sure why it's flat as opposed to flag. I mean, the correct word is
It would be flat. Yep.
Okay. And so that's on 104 and then again on 106.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
But that's all I had.
Okay,
I had a word that I thought. Line 151. Reads additional questions and discussions that the board to consider. Or for the board to consider.
That the board considered.
anyone else? I've got a couple. As long as we're at 151, I will jump to 154, 55, and 56, where it talks about a note that only one principal dwelling per lot, which would need to be removed. I think that's a zoning reg, not a note.
Right.
And let me scroll up.
Should it say, so should it say there is a zoning regulation or
Yes,
just
yes.
delete the whole, okay. Thank you.
And on line 28, Mr. Kiley moved to approve a special exception. I hope he didn't make that motion. What was needed was a motion to require a special exception as a condition. Zoning board grant special exceptions.
Right.
And that's all that I have. Okay, motion on the minutes. Somebody,
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as corrected.
Second.
motion made and seconded, all in favor, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved unanimously as corrected. Old business, zoning update. I can talk a little bit about the conditional use permits. Yesterday, I received a bunch of information from the state researcher. I really haven't had time to review it because it showed up at about 4:30. I've passed it on to Bill Griffin, and due to technical difficulties, he has not yet received it. So we will, report on that at our next meeting. I'd like to take up the question of how we proceed from here and the HOP grant and what we're gonna do. And whether we even go for a HOP grant. I'd like to have that discussion next, and I think, Eric, weren't you and Tim?
Yeah, Tim sent me
Taking the lead
stuff.
on that?
Well, Tim sent me a pile of stuff and we haven't gotten together anything to go through it.
Okay. R5. The question of allowing more than one principal building. That's something that we certainly could do if the board wishes to propose that kind of, amendment to the zoning regs.
Can anybody think of a downside to that?
I haven't thought of one yet.
Well, I think to your question that I don't see any downside in proposing it. If the town decided not to,
Yeah.
pass it, then okay, fine. It doesn't affect any of the other amendments we'd be
Mhm.
putting forward.
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does principal building imply that it will be for human habitation? I mean, we have, let's say there's 5 acres and you want to put up a house, a nice big barn, a nice big garage, and then you manufacture widgets and you want to do a little manufacturing, so you put up a nice big building for that. Do we have 4 buildings, principal buildings, or one principal building that?
I think that's a good question.
It's not defined in our definitions,
Right.
which is not surprising.
Well,
Should be.
and I think the part of why it's weird is because what you just described is allowed. Because one of those would be the principal building, and then you're allowed to have outbuildings for other uses.
Right.
That's allowed right now.
Yeah.
Right.
What you're not allowed to do is to have 2 structures with the same use in them.
2 families.
2 families.
Right,
Or 2 businesses,
Or 2 businesses, or you
Right.
can't have
Or
2.
2 garage?
Or
Or
2
2
garages.
barns.
or 2 barns.
You can't, right, Because you can only have-
one of each.
you can only
If
have
you
one
wanted a sheep
principal
barn and
building.
and a cow barn, you
Kidding.
couldn't do it.
No, but you can't,
Agricultural.
if your principal use is manufacturing, let's use that example, you can't build a second manufacturing building.
Right.
But you can build an agricultural building, you can build a housing building, you can build other uses. If your primary, like the lot across the street from you that used to have a barn, if you put a barn up and put sheep in it, that's the
Which
principal.
was what it had.
Exactly,
But
right.
it's, yeah.
You can't put a second one, but you can put a house there as a separate building.
So the house becomes the principal building, the others are accessories.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, to me, that's part of the flaw with the principal building language is
Right.
it's really only preventing you from having two of the same use, not
Mhm.
having multiple buildings.
In this case, we're
You would allow, yeah,
limiting the question to one zoning district for a specific purpose. I mean,
And to housing.
That's a house.
And where this started, I think, was, from what Rob was hearing from people, that, people wanted some generational housing. So they wanted to create a housing for their grandparents or their, their parents or whatever,
But now they can have ADUs.
which is limited in size.
Right.
So this would allow someone to build a 2,000 square foot house, and put their parents in the R5.
In the R5.
Right.
The big yellow house next to the elementary school, they've been adding on to that house for a long time. And I finally talked to the contractors the other day, and they said they built like a 3,000 square foot house on the back of that house for the parents to move into. A house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, kitchen,
Attached,
attached.
that's allowed in the CV. That's
Allowed where?
zone.
It's a CB zone.
Yeah.
Okay,
CV is more, what will the land support?
Right.
they were having a
Put a
hard
huge
time.
house on it. That way.
They were having a terrible time building it because they said the old house was 17 inches up square.
Oh, wow.
is that all?
But they said it would have been cheaper to just build a complete new house than to add this house onto this house.
Sometimes that's the wise decision.
Yeah.
Tear it
But
down.
I didn't, I wasn't understanding what rules they were going about.
On
CV, I guess.
CV district.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
so the concept of this rule, this change in the rural district. Could you summarize that again?
But, well, the concept is, say I don't wanna have to, if I've got 20 acres, I don't wanna have to subdivide it into 5-acre lots. If I could put 2 principal buildings on 1 5-acre lot, 2 residences on one of the 5-acre lots, rather than having to subdivide into the 4.
Well, you keep the 20-acre lot and put
Right.
2 buildings.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then there's gonna be a multifamily element to that as well.
There could be, that was one of the proposals is to allow a special with,
Duplex
conditions.
or triplex?
Yeah, the triplex or the quad. The triplex, you could go up to a triplex
The triplex,
by right.
by now, you can go in now, right?
Well, in theory it can, because as long as you say 2 of them are ADUs and they're within the ADU sizes, yeah, you could do it today.
So the devil's gonna be in the wording details. Are you
Right.
gonna work on that?
Yeah, we can. Because, and we said you can do a 4-plex, but you're either gonna have to get a special exception or you're gonna have to get conditional use if it's available.
Mhm.
If the conditional use isn't available, then they're gonna have to get a special exception from the zoning board.
And since conditional use has to be tied to an innovative land use concept or program.
Right.
And I think the only one that would be applicable that we've adopted here in Enfield is cluster. And I don't know that you would call 2 buildings a cluster. Could you?
Well, no, for the 4-plex might be,
A 4-plex maybe,
yeah,
yeah,
the 4-plex
Maybe.
It's
could
interesting,
be
Dan. Right
single
now,
structure though.
single structure.
4 units on a single structure on a single lot.
Yeah.
This is a cluster compared to 4 5-acre lots.
Right. Right now, in the R5 though, you look at this is the R5 language in our current zoning.
Oh, I know.
We do not allow duplex.
No, we don't. That's why we put in,
Even though we
That's
have
been
that
changed.
language down here, minimum lot size shall be 5 acres separate dwellings, in which case minimum lot size shall be 5 acres per dwelling.
Right.
Which is similar to the R1 and the R3.
Right.
But those specifically allow.
Right.
Duplex and multifamily.
I agree. That's why if you looked at the one we put across, we bolded the duplex, the triplex
To make it the same.
to make it the same.
But I think isn't that establishing the formula, Rob, for, you've got a 25 acre parcel, you wanna know how many.
Housing.
I don't know.
No,
It's not.
Yeah, so the way that I've always interpreted the R1 and the R3, so you see at the
Right.
beginning, here's the R3.
Right.
We allow 1 family, 2 family, multifamily dwellings. So if you want to build a triplex in the R3, you can.
Right.
But you need to have 3 acres per dwelling, so you
Right.
need a 9 acre lot.
Yeah.
For 3 dwellings,
Right,
Yeah.
for a triplex.
and those could be, yeah, in,
But in the R5, we do not allow that.
Right.
Right.
Even though that language is there, which is kind of weird. I don't know
Right.
why that's the case.
So what language in the R3 is not in the R5?
Right here, that's right, that's right there at the top, right there, I find.
multifamily.
family, two family or multi-family dwellings.
That's why we added it.
Maybe
Let's
this-
add it to R5.
We did.
Yeah.
That was the suggested change.
Well, yes and no. We put it as a triplex, not as a multifamily, because a multifamily could be 15. If you had 75 acres, you could build 15 then. A 15 unit.
And is that something that we would want or not want?
I think Kurt would tell you, no way.
But that's why I put it out there. Personally, I don't think that would sell.
I don't think it would sell in the town either. but,
Right.
You know, we need to.
That's why,
we need to be Clear.
we said we'd go up to a triplex by right.
Oh, wait a minute. So we're saying in the R3 district, you had a 75 acre parcel in R3 district, you could put up a 15 unit apartment.
Right.
That's
Today,
If
In
the
the
land
R3.
would support it, you know, if you could
assuming
get
that's getting
a big enough
Right.
septic system.
Right.
And so why don't we think that would be suitable for the R5 district?
I think the history there is that we intended the R5 to be the agricultural residential district, and it was gonna be very rural.
Maintain rural character.
Yes.
and and 75 acres in an R3 will give you 25 units.
But I think it's reasonable that you guys would say, we allow triplex or quadplex.
Right.
That's it,
Right.
cap it.
Right.
You'd have to change that further wording.
Unless you're gonna go and do a cluster development.
So
The
what we need,
cluster is subdivision, right?
I know.
Creating lots.
Right.
so what we need next then is, I think, is a draft of the warrant article that would be voted on. So
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
the
Okay,
Ts and Is and all
Yep.
that.
okay.
Who wants to work on that? Dan?
Brad? Yeah, we'll
Dan
work
and
on it.
Brad? Okay. Top grant, how we're gonna go forward on the big rewrite. That's right. You guys haven't talked about it yet. Parking. I haven't seen the draft.
Anybody need a copy?
No?
Actually, I have seen this,
Okay.
Yeah.
but, maybe Tim, you just wanna run through it for us? I
Sure.
think this is your work, right?
So what I did was I did a word search in the zoning ordinance for the word parking. Copied and pasted everything in our current zoning ordinance into this document. So we're limited to looking at just parking issues. And, you'll see that each district has essentially the same description. R1, R3, R5, and I suggested, let's just strike all that out. Simplify it, but put in the parking section all in one section. And of course, the reference here is just C409.
Right.
Know what you've got to do for parking. The second page, community business district. This is, I really couldn't see how you could tweak around with this parking without causing all kinds of other issues. So my suggestion here is that if we do indeed do away or have a warrant article to do away with this community business district, then it would probably say that the Route 4 district.
Yeah.
It would say that the community business district would basically absorb the Route 4 district. So I think the problem would be kind of taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, I did not attempt to change anything in there about that. Shed Street, again, just see section 409. Home occupation, no proposed changes, parking and loading areas, see a new section. And, let's see. That takes you all the way over to the last 2 pages of the document. So, anyway. So parking and loading areas. And this, we certainly need to decide here what we want to do. Is this 10 by 20 or 9 by 18? And I suggested, let's have a recommended and then a minimum. We could have a one standard that's inflexible if you want. Instead of specifying lane widths and parking space rows, et cetera, just let them figure that, let the engineers figure that out. So that's on the dimensions. On residential parking, and here I think this will bear some thought. Minimum 1 parking space per housing unit. I think currently we're looking at, is it Rob? 2 for each dwelling unit and 1 for each additional bedroom.
Right.
2 for each, 2 parking spaces for each dwelling unit of 3 bedrooms or less, and 1 additional parking space for each additional bedroom.
Right.
That struck me as being a little bit overly prescriptive. But what do you want to do? What's your pleasure?
Before you get into that, there is part of this new legislation that I referenced previously, and I think I have it on my computer. I'll try to call it up. I think there's a state mandated maximum of 1.5 spaces per, I believe it's per apartment or 1 bedroom or studio apartment. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to find it. And whatever we do needs to be consistent with the new state law. And it's HB 1400.
Okay.
Budget bill? HB.
HB 1400. And let me see. Yeah, okay, I've got it. Why don't you go ahead and keep talking and I'll try to find the parking section.
Okay. Then talking about temporary lodging parking, basically 1 space per bedroom. Church, commercial. Item 4, we've discussed how we were gonna leave that up to the engineers and the site plan people about. All we're saying is, we have absolutely no on-street parking in town. If you walk from Main Street all the way down to Oak Grove, there's 7 on-street parking spaces. So no one can, there's no way you could not have your parking on your own site or some arrangement with some other site. So I wasn't quite sure what we were trying to avoid here by being too terribly prescriptive about that.
let me tell you the new language, which I just found.
Okay.
May regulate accessory parking for vehicles, but shall not require more than 1.5 residential parking spaces per unit for studio and one-bedroom units under 1,000 square feet that meet the requirements for workforce housing under RSA 674:58 Roman 4, and shall not require more than 1.5 residential parking spaces per unit for multifamily developments of 10 units or more.
That one doesn't make as much sense.
15 spaces for 10 units.
Well, in an
I
area
mean,
that has a lot of public transportation.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
there's a lot in this bill that, caused me to vote against it.
But that's up to the guy building the building, how many spaces. It's saying you can't mandate. As a town, you can't mandate. That doesn't mean that the owner
The
can't
owner
put
can
more
do more.
spaces in.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, they're not mandating a max, they're mandating a minimal.
And so for the residential parking, the 2 spaces plus 1 for each additional bedroom, is that a requirement or just that the land is there if needed?
Well, that's a requirement in their existing
Requirement.
zoning.
currently it's required.
Right. But
Yeah.
is it, we have, our current septic system says, oh, you don't have to do it, you just have to have a plan. So is it that you have to, for a 2-bedroom, if you have to put in 3 parking places, or you just have to have the space for them if you need it?
I think the site plan, we would.
It's required.
Three base.
It's required under our current regs.
Right.
To now been superseded.
We are superseding, but right now it is, yeah.
Yeah,
But the one space proposed means the new
Right.
law.
Right.
Yeah,
Or it could be 1.5. I mean,
a regular car and a smart car.
I'm not gonna, it's not a hill I wanna.
Right, you're not gonna die on that hill. But, yeah,
Whatever y'all think it should be.
yeah, I mean, 1 makes sense as a minimum, and obviously, if the owner wants to put more spaces, then he can. But we can't tell him he has to. And if a person renting, it's got 2 cars, it's their problem.
and the owner has to
And
figure
the
out
owner
who
has
is
to figure it
marketing.
out, exactly.
However, no, never mind.
We digest this,
Should.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. See if there's anything that jumps out and says, oh,
Is it okay if individuals emailed me something that they saw that, Tim, you needed?
as long as we do it
as
individually.
long as it's not a group email, sure.
Right,
Okay. What else did we have? Somebody want to refresh my memory?
Doing away with the Route 4 commercial district.
Right, I think we pretty well decided that we would propose that.
Yep.
And have it go back to being CBD
Okay,
with no change in boundaries.
so we're ready to draft the,
We're ready to draft a couple of ordinances.
and then, ADUs.
Yeah, what's your pleasure on ADUs?
I'm still gathering research. I did run across something, question you had, Tim. I found a document that says New Hampshire ADU law explained, RSA 674, 71 through 73, and it says Municipalities may restrict ADUs from being built with manufactured housing or townhouse style units. Law allows us to restrict people in manufactured home. Whether we want to include that in our reg or not, have to talk about.
Right, and my suggestion was that be allowed if the single family home to which the ADU is being attached
Right.
is also a mobile home.
And that's probably when I get the draft put together, that's probably how I'll draft it up. Because right on Flanders Street, my street right now, there's a open home being removed, or manufactured home being removed, and they're replacing it with, I guess, another manufactured home, probably a bigger one. You know, and nothing wrong with that. But anyway, this was a very good explanation. This really helped me understand the state law as our basis for writing the code.
In last meeting, did we talk about increasing the size? And what was
Yeah.
the final for that?
Well, we had a discussion on,
I know what I want, yeah.
allowing the ADUs not to exceed the square footage of the principal residence.
I don't know that I agree with that.
No, well, yeah, because then you just
You could have-
change it.
You could have a four
Just
thousand.
keep swapping
Exactly,
principal. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to see,
Right now, it's
1,200.
800s.
It's right 800 right now,
right, I'd like to see it expanded to 1,200.
1,200.
One or both?
I'd like to see both.
Yeah.
Myself,
1,200,
personally,
provided they meet all the setbacks originally, like,
not to exceed 1,200.
not to exceed 1,200. Okay.
And if a ADU is built in an existing building, like a garage or barn conversion, the setbacks obviously would be grandfathered, you think?
Yeah.
And perhaps there should be some sort of a special exception, or if we ever get to conditional use or something, that if the existing structure is slightly bigger than 1,200 and you're not changing the footprint, maybe you could go to that size. You don't think so, Brad?
I don't know, I think you're getting into the weeds, not the weeds, you're getting into complications there.
Well, and the other question I had was, is it 800 square feet of living space or 1,200 square feet of living space? Or
Conditioned space, we call it. Yep.
addition space?
So it's space that's either heated or cooled or both, you know,
So
for,
then if you're building something inside of a barn, you would limit the floor
Yeah.
space to 1,200 square
Right.
feet.
yep,
And you'd probably have open spaces around if the barn was bigger than that.
Storage or whatever,
Right.
could have a
that's how
pole,
you get
mother.
around it.
Yep.
I think it's cleaner if you keep it 1,200.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah,
I thought I'd convinced you
So
guys
basement
should
basement doesn't
not
have,
have this restriction of size.
it's not a heated basement.
But, change of opinion, looks like.
Well,
And my question then was, what is it we're trying to avoid here? That was my question last week, and
I remember that discussion, and I thought we wanted to make sure that the ADU was sort of secondary to the primary, the
Right.
principal.
Right.
Because I can have three principal buildings, that's,
so consequently.
At 3,000 square feet each.
right,
What you said, what you remembered we talked about was that the ADU just must be smaller than the principal.
I thought that's what we said.
That's what,
Yeah,
well,
yeah. Because Dan, how many square feet is your place?
900,
So should, somebody be allowed to build a 1,200 square foot ADU? That's bigger than your place. Should they have to keep it smaller than the principal?
well, yeah, except the 1,200 is gonna become the principal.
Right.
And the 900 is an ADU, because it's below 1,000.
and
Right.
my reaction is, why not?
Exactly, yeah, yeah, that's my reaction too.
I'm just trying to think of downsides. I can't think of any, but I'm just,
I guess my thought is that there ought to be a hard and fast upper limit that says this is an ADU and it's not a second principal building.
Well, it will not be an issue in the village if we carry forward, or if we follow through with the village regulations we've been talking about for 2 years. This will probably be an issue only in the rural district,
Right.
right? So let's put our minds in the rural district. You're talking about somebody with a single family home, a 3-bedroom home, maybe it's 2,400 square feet. They've got a 2-car garage. What is it you don't want them to do as they're thinking about an ADU? Is to put a second 2,400 square foot house or 2,300 square foot house up, let's say. To comply with the idea that it must be smaller than the main house. So whether or not it's 1,200 or 2,400, does it really matter to anybody?
I think it's gonna be hard to sell the concept of an unlimited size or not to exceed the size of the current principal building. I think politically, that's gonna be a harder sell than saying accessory dwelling unit, it's subservient, it's smaller, this is how big it can be.
I like 1,200. I think 1,200 is a pretty good number. isn't it?
My first house was 1,200 and we had, you know,
You can get a second
adults.
bedroom in there.
Right.
We had 3 bedrooms,
Yeah, so do I.
3 bedrooms and 2 kids.
I'm not sure, though, that allowing us essentially a second house on the same lot is that unpalatable, because if the idea is to prevent huge structures from being built,
Right.
the person who can do that is just gonna go do that.
Right.
There's nothing that prevents somebody from building a 20,000 square foot house
Right.
on their lot, just knock down the existing one and build with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not really preventing huge structures from being built by limiting the size of ADUs. And people who are looking to build an ADU for multi-generational housing, they're gonna be cost conscious, to say the least. So I think that that scenario where somebody's gonna go, well, we're gonna keep the 900 square foot house
And build
and
it.
build a 10,000 square foot
Right.
house.
Yeah.
I don't think that's,
No.
I don't think that's really something that is ever gonna happen.
Well, it could happen,
It could.
but I don't see. any
What happens if it does?
problem with
Right, exactly. Is there a problem because it does?
Actually,
Because it's kind of like the fourplex. You might see 1 or 2 a year. In the R
That'd be a
five.
lot.
Hmm?
That'd be a lot.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And
Yeah,
I think the same thing is gonna happen with the ADU.
Yeah.
If you say it's unlimited, then it's still gonna be 1 or 2 a year.
No, but I think in terms of, getting it passed, having.
Oh, yeah,
Having an 800 and 1,200 is clean and simple and people get it.
right. Fair 1,200?
I'd say 1.8, 1.12.
And we can do a special exception if you want to exceed that. Would they buy that? Sale.
Complicates the message, but
Right,
But at least it allows zoning board to take a look at the particulars of the
Right.
site.
Well, you could get a unique situation where you got a family with 6 kids. You know,
Yeah,
moving in and need something bigger than 1,200 square feet.
Well,
And they come to the zoning board and say, look, we need to build this ADU a little bit bigger because
exactly. You
That,
can't,
that argument doesn't apply on the zoning board though, because they're considering the land, not the people who are there. in
because they're
the-
only there now.
or
Right,
they can just build a bigger house.
Right,
Well,
or add on to it.
where it might come to play is when you're trying to fill out that barn and you've got
yeah,
a 1,200 square foot apartment and a 1,500 square foot barn, and you're saying, man, I just need this extra 300 feet.
right.
Special exception would allow them to consider the neighbors, and would this be a problem, and is a hardship and all that.
It's back to if you don't change the footprint, you ought to be able to build in it then.
Yeah,
right. That's probably the special exception that would fly.
Right,
If you got a barn that's 1,500 square feet inside
right.
and you want to put a 1,500 square foot ADU in there.
Right.
yeah. That's the way I think it should fly.
And we'll eventually make that if we, perhaps a conditional use,
Right.
arrangement.
Well, conditional use, as I'm understanding it, has to be tied to innovative land use measure. And
Look at that section I sent you. It's city 11 zoning ordinance. The conditional use process is in a section of the ordinance that's not tied to any particular district. So lays out how that works. Then you go to the district that tells you what conditional use items might be approved. It's kind of the mechanism.
yeah, but as far as I know at this point, state statute limits the areas where we can impose conditional use. Can I get our alternate and our audience member to weigh in on this subject?
The 1,200,
Yeah.
I
Or-
think that's a good
or on the-
number. I think the 1,200 square feet's a good number to go with.
For one or for both?
I would say for both. Say leave it the same for both and
And then if they're building it inside of a barn, that's 1,500 square feet, they get a special exception.
Yeah.
To fill the barn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Dan Regan?
So I guess I have a kind of a rhetorical question first, which is, what did we hear when we did the listening sessions for master plan part 2 that also had the zoning and potential changes? It seemed to me what we heard was we need to be really careful with how we approach housing. We all know it's an issue, but we need to be careful. Now I sit here and I listen to everyone talk about R5, putting up 2 houses, taking 20-acre lot, dividing it into 4, put up two houses on each, now you have 8 houses. I hear a lot of talk about a couple of ADUs, 1,800 or 1,200. It looks to me, just, and I could be completely wrong, that the town is about here and the planning board is about here, right here. It looks like you're a little bit beyond. And I didn't see it all rolled out, but just my impression. So,
Okay. Somehow I think the planning board should be a little beyond where the town is, so that you can lead. We may be too far ahead. Something that we will maybe ought to discuss, and something that we would definitely learn if we put this up for a vote in March.
My impression of the ADU was that it was living space. But if it's not heated, then the part that, did you say that the part that's not heated doesn't count as the square footage?
Correct, like an unfinished basement, we're not counting towards them.
But what about an enclosed porch? A garage?
Garage wouldn't, unless it's conditioned space, heated garage, I guess would count, but porch typically is not counted towards it because it's
In the
unheated.
current 800 square feet porches you meant to.
Unless that's a heated porch, it's like a year-round porch, that's living space, But a 3-season porch would not qualify as a porch.
But then each of these ADUs could then put up their own unheated garage.
Accessory, well, I mean, accessory building, right?
Accessory to the accessory to the.
Or they could put up a garage with 4 bays in it or something. I'm certainly willing to compromise in my thinking to 800, 1,200 or 2 1,200s, and I'll keep working on this issue in the years ahead. But for now, it's fine.
Well, why don't, why don't we draft up a amendment to our current ADU,
Yeah.
make the changes and pick a number, 800 or 1,200. And let's come back and see how it sits with us. And then we'll have public hearings too.
Phil,
We'll see how it sits with the public.
you might want to use that phrase conditioned space.
Right.
That's,
Yeah, I'm not seeing that in the state law, any place, how they define that.
but I think that's a good point.
An ADU minimum maximum size may be specified, but the municipality cannot require ADUs to be smaller than 750 square feet. The owner, however, may build a unit smaller than that, subject to local ADU unit size minimum, if any. It doesn't say, it doesn't define what the space is.
Right, yeah, we don't have a minimum at this point, and I don't think we should make a minimum because, you know, there are studio apartments that are 400 or 500 square feet. And that might be what somebody needs. They're, you know, widowed mother-in-law.
There are building codes that do specify minimum size of the bedrooms. Kitchens, I think. And so there are some codes that will define a minimum.
Okay,
State is working on trying to make it possible for more tiny homes. They have got some exceptions out there now for like, you know, a staircase. You can have the ship's ladder in a tiny home.
mm-hmm,
The staircase in a regular house has to be a certain rise and run, so it's not too steep. I mean, a lot of old houses go in staircases like this. But a new house, staircase is nice and gentle, you know, like, but they do have exceptions and they're working on that. I don't know if you had any legislation proposed or considered last session.
not, you know, not to that effect. I know that there were a few bills that had to do with building codes that would make it easier for people to convert big old houses into multifamilies. And one of them was that they got rid of the requirement for sprinklers, in a conversion up to, I don't remember the size.
I think that was 3 units.
What?
I think that was 3 units.
I think you're right, but I don't wanna say without being sure. So, Bill, you wanna draft up something for our next meeting and we can take a look at it?
Okay.
Anything else?
Anybody want to help me on that? Volunteers?
Uh,
Well,
Well, I can
I'll
help.
draft it up myself. I mean, you know, two heads is better than one. That's okay. I'll come up with something.
Come up with something and, you know, we'll take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, so we talked last meeting about coming up with a plan to work our way towards a complete rewritten zoning ordinance in summer of 25. Which means that we kind of need to start that process pretty soon, right away. And we talked about the various, having some work groups. So I put together an action plan, if you will, that we can consider. It's really a rough draft. It's just an outline about how that might work. And David, if you want, I'll send it to you ahead of time and we'll bring it up next meeting. I do have copies here. I'll leave it up.
If you've got copies, why don't you distribute them to the group and we can discuss it at our next meeting? I think that would be a great topic, for us to dive into. Because A, it's important, highly important. And B, if we are going to go for a HOP grant, the applications need to be in by the end of September. So I think that needs to be basically a high priority. Anybody else?
For one here.
Thanks. I do wanna just comment on this rural district, the general concepts here. Now. My comments are actually specifically about the conceptual plan we just heard. So I think I'm gonna hold those when we do finally get around talking about the rural district. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any new business put on the table? Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:01. Yep. Thank you, folks.
You.
We have made progress,
Yeah.
and it comes slowly.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
All right, so our next meeting is September 11th.
Really thank you if we did a complete rewrite of the zoning ordinance that you can pass a vote. I think this is incremental.
But the problem with the incremental, it'll take us 25 years to get over intro.
Yeah.
Let's try it. It's sort of a catch 22.
It is. Yeah. And, yeah, but then my sister is back.
Sure.
Thank you.
They're going back next week?
Keeping us together.
I don't even know why they come home anymore. They're only here for like 4 or 5 weeks, thank you. No, they're here for like 8.
Yeah. They're good for me.
Hey, Dan.
He's got.
Show you something.
Yeah. Oh. Why, yesterday? No.
We just did here. So in your, I've got one, this sort of post regarding chalk drawing.
Sorry, that one really annoyed me. I had to.
Did I give?
Yeah, Reagan one.
It came through to me with a yellow highlighted disclaimer that are to go through the Cleveland State University mail system. And that was my first job out of college.
Yeah, 5 cents.
Yeah, what was?
Really didn't them at all, so. It wasn't me, no.
Oh, wow, that
Yeah.
is weird.
It was like from one of the, one of the other posters or something
That
that.
was right in the middle
Yeah,
of yours.
I was funny, no, it's not me.
Okay,
I don't even know if I've been through Cleveland. Maybe I drove there once.
just wonder, because, the Upper Valley is a small place.
Yeah.
A lot of people escape from Cleveland.
Right, oh, that's so funny, but no, it wasn't any association of mine. Yeah,
I just wondered.
oh, right on, yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, look, maybe what our rural district should say, okay. I think get rid of ours. One with some installation of one of all. We got a lot. That talks right now. You can only develop a certain percentage of lots. It's supposed to be all your house, whatever you want to build. Build it. And the rest of it, you can get them.
Oh, I agree, because it's just. Cheaper to build.
Another big reason.
Wow, thanks. So check your schedule and email.
Yeah.
If it works, great. If it works, fine.
It'll probably be tomorrow night before I got to assist that.